Hi, in this tutorial I will give an overview of ScottPlot. ScottPlot is a free and open source plotting library for .NET. So let's get started with this ScottPlot plotting library. So it's a free and open source plotting library for .NET, and basically you just start using it by installing a NuGet package directly from Visual Studio. You find more information about ScottPlot in general on their homepage. So basically this is all you need to do in order to get started with the ScottPlot. So basically you need to install the ScottPlot.WinForms NuGet package, and you do it directly from Visual Studio inside your solution when you create a WinForms application in Visual Studio. Next, you just drag the forms plot from the toolbox onto your form, and then you can start writing the code in order to create a plot inside your application. So in order to create a simple plot, you basically just need a few lines of code. So assume you have two arrays, one with X data, in this case just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you have the Y data. Also this is an array with doubles, and then you could have 1, 4, 9, 16, 25 or whatever, and then you just use forms plot 1, which is the default name. Of course you can change it in the properties window, dot plot, and the function or method called Add.Scatter, which is the default or basic plot in the ScottPlot library, and then the input argument is just the two arrays, data X and data Y, and then you just show the plot in or the data in your application by just using the refresh method. So now I have opened my Visual Studio, so then just create a new project, select a Windows Forms application, click next, and then specify a name. So I just have created a local folder here where I put my solution, so then I can just call the app whatever I like. I just can call it plotting data. I can call it plotting data like this, and then just click next. I select the latest .NET version, which is basically 7. I just use .NET 6. Of course you can use 7 or just use the .NET version that you prefer. So I just click create. And then the first step now is to install this NuGet package. Then I just go to my project, just right click, select manage NuGet packages, and then here under browse I just search for this ScottPlot library like this, and then there are several versions here. We are going to create a Windows Forms application, so we need to select ScottPlot.WinForms, click install, and then just click OK. And now the library has been installed, and as you see here in the Solution Explorer under dependencies, packages, this ScottPlot has been installed. So the next step is just to drag in the control from the toolbox, and if you don't find it, you just search for ScottPlot, but I find it here, ScottPlot.WinForms, and then you have this forms plot. I just drag it to the designer, and then here I have a basic plot. Then I can resize it, or I can resize this one to fit the plot like this. So basically, now my graphical user interface is finished. I can of course change form 1 to something more meaningful, plot data or something. And then I just double click here, and then we can start creating the code in order to show data for this plot or this chart. So let's just start with our basic data set. We have two arrays, data X and data Y. So this should be the data on the X-axis, and this should be the data on the Y-axis. And then we just use this forms plot. I guess this is the default name. Of course, you should change the name to something more meaningful for you and your application. And then dot plot. And then we use this scatter plot, which is the default plot here in the ScottPlot library. So Add.Scatter. And then just the input to argument to this method is just two arrays of data, namely data X and data Y, like this. So basically this is all you need. Then also you typically want to refresh it in order to make sure that the data are presented in the chart. So then just use this refresh method, like this. So basically that's everything that you need to do. So then just run the application by clicking on the run button here. And then you see we are getting this data plotted using this ScottPlot library. And then you see the X-axis is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which you see here, 1, 2, 3, 5. And then we have the Y data, which is 1, 4, 9, 16, and 25, like this. So basically, this is how you plot basic data using this ScottPlot library. And of course, you can improve the code there. You can put this code into a separate method. So let's just create a method called create chart or something, like this, and then just put the code inside here. Then it shouldn't have any return value, so we just use void like this. And then inside this form one_load, which is the method that is executed when the application is starting, we just call this create chart method like this. So now the code is a bit more structured, but the result will be the same. You get this chart in your Windows Forms application. So we have learned how to use a basic scatter plot using this ScottPlot plotting library. So the next step would be to show or demonstrate how you can plot real-time data using this scatter plot. So we are back in Visual Studio, and here is the previous example, the basic chart example, where we use this AddScatter in order to plot the data in these two arrays. So the next step would be to plot so-called real-time data. Assume we have a sensor or something that we want to plot data using this ScottPlot library. So typically the first thing we need to do is to go to the designer here and then just add a timer. So now we are going to update the plot inside the timer, let's say every second or 10 seconds or whatever. And then you can in theory read data from a real sensor and then plot it here in the plot. So basically we will just use a random generator in order to simulate values from this sensor. It could be a temperature sensor or it could be other types of sensors. So then just use this timer, double click on it. Here in the toolbox, just double click on it and then it's here. And then you can double click on it in order to create an event handler for this timer. Of course you can change the name for it. Here timer 1. You can change the name here in the properties window, but the default name is just timer 1. I just use the default name, but typically you should change this name to a more descriptive name that give meaning in your application. Then inside this timer, let's start by initialize the timer in the form load. So then inside the form load we can initialize the timer. Let's start by so then just time 1 and dot, and then we typically need to specify the interval, and this interval is in seconds, in milliseconds. So then 1000 is basically 1 second. Next we need to start the timer, so then we just timer 1 dot start like this. So now the timer should be okay. So next we need to create the code. So basically let's just in the create chart method just create these two arrays. Let's put it in the top of the class here like this. And now we are not plotting these data, since we are going to plot data from this sensor, or actually in this case just a random generator. So you just create two empty arrays, one for the X data and one for the Y data. And then this create chart method we created in the previous example, you can change it to update chart or something, because now we are going to update the chart in this case every second, but we can easily change the interval of the timer here. So here let's start by creating a random generator, so then we just use the built-in one, random, and then just creating a variable called random or rand or something equals to new random like this. And then let's just create a variable called the double new value or something. And here we are going to use this random generator like this. So this generates a value between, as you see here, it generates a value between 0 and 1, assuming you want to simulate a temperature value between 20 and 30 degrees Celsius or something. Then we just multiply with 10. Then we get a value between 0 and 10, but we want to have it between 20 and 30, and then we just plus 20 like this. So now we have created and used a simple random generator in order to simulate a temperature value between 20 and 30 degrees Celsius. And then we have changed this method to update chart, and then just remove this one from the form load. And now we are going to call this update chart method here in the timer event handler. So then just change name to update chart like this. Next will be to fill in data in these arrays that we have created here, which is empty so far. So then we just start by data X equals to data X, and then we want to append a value to this array. And for the X array, it should be just a running number, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. So then we just create a variable, we can call it K, K equals to 0. So basically we just create an integer variable K starting by 0, and then inside this update chart we just type k++, meaning it's increment the value, so it starts with 0, and then first time it's k will be 1, next time it will be 2, 3, 4, etc. So then we just inside append here we just put k, and also we need to use this toArray method like this, and a semicolon. So basically this is the x data, which will now be an array of 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And then we do the same for the y data, like this. And then no, we should not use k here, but this new value, which is this generated or simulated temperature value, which is between 20 and 30 degrees Celsius. And also use this toArray here, like this. So now we have the x array and the y array, which are now put into this Add.Scatter function, x and y, like this. Basically here, since we are now plotting and updating the chart in every iteration here, we typically use the dot render instead of refresh, like this. So basically this is the first version, so let's just run the application and see what's happening. So that was the first value. The second value, basically it's a value between 20 and 30 degrees Celsius in this case. And you see we have to roll around in order to see the updated value. So then basically we just need to use one more function or method. So basically we need to use this formsplot1 dot plot and then dot axis auto, like this. So let's just run it now, and now the axis should be automatically updated. So now you see this was first value, second value, third, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc. And then you see and the y-axis is between 20 and 30 degrees Celsius. And then you see one more thing here. You see in each iteration the color of the plot is changing. So typically you don't want to change the color in each iteration. So let's see how we can fix that. So basically in order to set the color, we just use another argument of this Add.Scatter method. So then basically comma and then color, and then we just specify a specific color. It could be, so then we just use the built-in color class, then color dot, and then we can specify or use any of these predefined colors. So we have lots of different colors to choose between. So just use, in this case I just use orange, like this. Now let's just run it. So now you see that this Add.Scatter has X data, Y data, and then you can specify different properties here, and one of the properties is the color. So then just run it. And you see now it's orange, and then it's orange all the time, like this. So basically this is how you create a simple chart for real-time plotting using this ScottPlot library. And in this case we are just using a random generator in order to simulate a real temperature sensor that present temperature value, in this case between 20 and 30 degrees Celsius. So the next step now would be to have a title for our plot, x-axis label and a y-axis label. So let's see how we can do that. So then I just create a new method here in my application. I can call it initialize chart or something. And inside this initialize chart method, I can specify different properties. One property could be this x-axis, or sorry, x label. And then inside here you just specify the name. On the x-axis we typically have time in seconds or something. So that's the x label. You can just copy it, do the same for the y label, just change x to y, and then since we are now simulating a temperature value, we can just specify here temperature. And typically we also want to have the unit in degrees Celsius, like this. So now we have x label and y label, and then finally we could also have a title. So then let's select the title and then create a proper title. It could be temperature sensor or something. So basically now we have created the x label, y label and title, and then in the initialize method we just call that method in the form here, form load, like this. So now let's just run it. And then you see you have a title, x label, y label, and the data are now plotted inside here. So basically this is a basic real-time plot using this ScottPlot plotting library. So that's all for now. So good luck using the ScottPlot plotting library. Thank you and goodbye.